Maybe seated. You don't have to stand for the sermon. If you did, I'd have to cut it short. Shabbat Shalom. So when my dad was alive and we would talk and he'd ask me a question about, do I do this or do I do that? Or, do I insist on black kosher meat or will I eat regular kosher meat? And, he would find out that I was lenient in some area of observance and he would criticize my leniency. Okay, now my dad was completely non-observant. Okay, so it was easy for him because he'd say, well, I'm not observant, but if I was, I'd be strictly Orthodox, right? Like right now, I didn't see him, but I heard that he literally ate shrimp on Yom Kippur, right? But if he was observant, he would be like super observant. So the rules he didn't follow were a lot stricter than the rules which I did follow. Okay, now, if you study Zionist or socialist intellectual history, you quickly learn that in the late 1800s and early 1900s, Odessa was the center of Jewish intellectual ferment. Okay, virtually every important Jewish thinker spent some time in Odessa. Why? Because it was the Wild West of the Russian Empire, and the government would exile to Odessa everyone who was a potential troublemaker, but wasn't thought deserving of execution. Okay, so if you were like an intermediate danger, they sent you to Odessa. Okay, so most of the Jews in Odessa were Zionists or socialists or communists or anarchists, and they were not particularly observant. But according to my thesis advisor, Dr. Michael Meyer, the rabbis in Odessa were the most stringent and fanatical in the whole Russian Empire. Why? Because nobody did what they said, right? If no one is following you, you can be as strict as you want with no real negative consequences, right? But if people are going to follow your rulings, then they have to be more reasonable, right? I mean, it's like, when we were dealing 4 years ago now with the question of Zoom and could we count people in the minion and so on and so forth, I mean, I knew that whatever I decided, that's what we were actually going to do, right? So I had to be reasonable in what I decided, right? But if if we had a board that said, well, we're going to do what we want, who is the rabbi to tell? I could have been very, very stringent, right? Because it wouldn't matter because nobody would have done what I said, right? Now, there are many debates about the historicity of the Bible stories, right? But the later you are, the more likely that the story's characters are real people, even if not every detail is exactly the way it happened. Right, so if you talk to historians, right, was Moses real? Maybe, maybe not. Were Adam and Eve real? Certainly not, okay? Was David real? Saul? Samuel? Absolutely, they certainly were, okay? Even if, again, what they're described as doing in the Bible is not exactly the way it happened, but there's no doubt that they were real people. However, the book of Esther, most scholars agree, is not history. Okay, the Persian Empire kept good records, many of which we have today, and there's no record of any of the events that are recorded in the book of Esther. But the Haftorah that we read does reflect historical people and events. Okay, why do we read it? Because it's the Shabbat before Purim, and the Midrash understands that Haman was descended from Agag, the king who was killed in the Haftorah. In the book of Esther, it's called Haman HaAgagi, right? Haman the Agagite, okay? And the Midrash says he fathered a child while he was in captivity, but before he was executed by Samuel, okay? So if Saul had done what he was supposed to do and put Agag to death right away, there would have been no Haman, right? But Haman was descended from that child that Agag fathered while in captivity. And the book of Esther, I mean, if you read it, and we tend to gloss over it, right? But at the end of the book, we killed a lot of people, right? 75,000 people, okay? Including women and children, right? I mean, because it makes us uncomfortable, right? And it should make us uncomfortable, but it was a fantasy written at a time when Jews were powerless, right? And if you look here in this country, superhero comic books were, for the most part, devised by Jews during World War II, right? And who were the superheroes fighting? The Nazis, right? Because we felt powerless, right? We felt powerless. I mean, yeah, there were plenty of Jews in the military, but Jewish leaders went to the White House and said, bomb the rail lines to the concentration camps. Oh, no, we can't do that. It's not a military target, right? Let Jewish refugees in. Oh, no, we can't do that. It'll cause anti-Semitism, right? So Jews felt powerless. So, you know, it's fun to read about Jews making the streets of Persia run red with the blood of anti-Semites, just like it was fun to see Superman or Indiana Jones beat Nazis to a pulp, right? But we have to read this Haftorah differently now that we have power, right? I mean, I don't know how many of you know the name Baruch Goldstein, all right? It's a shame, really, more people don't know who he was. I think it was 1994, I think. Baruch Goldstein was an American-born Israeli physician from Brooklyn, I'm proud to say, who lived in Hebron, in the Jewish settlement in Hebron. And the Jews in Hebron are the most fanatic Jews that there are. And the Muslims in Hebron are the most fanatic Muslims that there are. So the night before Purim, he went into the cave of the patriarchs, right? Abraham's tomb, where there's both a synagogue and a mosque. And he went into the mosque with his army issued, I'm not sure if it was an Uzi or an M16, but he went into the mosque and he shot and killed 24 Muslims at prayer, right? And Itamar Ben Gvir right? The public security minister had, until recently, a portrait of Baruch Goldstein in his office, okay? And he held Baruch Goldstein up as a hero, okay? And Itamar Ben-Gvir, when he was 18, right, the army said, we're not gonna take you because you're nuts, your views are too fanatic, okay? And shortly before Rabin was assassinated, Itamar Ben-Gvir went and stole the hood ornament off of Rabin's car, and he held it up in front of the cameras, and he said, if we got to his car, we'll get to him too. Okay, and shortly thereafter he did. And Itamar Ben-Gvir has no business being within 1,000 miles of the cabinet group. Okay, but he's a member of the cabinet. Okay, and he's the Minister of Public Security. Okay, so when people say this is the most right-wing government in the history of Israel, this is what they mean. Okay, now, in fairness, pretty much every time Ben-Gvir issues a ruling that's too crazy, the cabinet countermands it. For example, Ben-Gvir issued an order, because it's Ramadan, okay? No Muslims can go to the Temple Mount during Ramadan. Okay, that would have been real popular, right? The cabinet wisely countermanded it. Okay, so credit where credit is due, right? But why did the cabinet counter? Because we have power. We have responsibility, right? And for Baruch Goldstein, the Palestinians were Amalek. And there's a mitzvah to eradicate Amalek. And Saul was punished in the Haftarah because he didn't eradicate Amalek, right? And a prominent Israeli said, because look, most Israelis are troubled and concerned about the civilian toll in Gaza, right? And they're troubled and concerned about the potential for famine and the lack of civilian aid. They're also troubled and concerned because they know that when aid is let in, it's taken by Hamas, right? So, like H.L. Mencken said, every problem has a solution which is simple, elegant, and wrong, right? So it's easy for the world to say, well, just let the trucks in. Okay, well, is the world going to make sure that the trucks don't also contain weapons? Is the world going to make sure that the fuel goes to the homes of civilians and not to the tunnels and headquarters of Hamas? Is the world going to make sure that the food feeds women and children and not Hamas fighters? Right? So it's a problem. So you come to me and you say, Rabbi, what's the solution? And to quote Fiddler on the Roof, to quote not the rabbi in Fiddler, but Tevye, I'll tell you, I don't know, right? But we should be troubled by it, and we should be concerned by it, and it should bother us, okay? And just like Baruch Goldstein said, well, the Palestinians are Amalek, and it's a mitzvah to eradicate them, there are prominent Israeli rabbis today who are saying this, okay? And there's now a call for every rabbi in Israel on Purim to get up in the shul and say, the Palestinians are not Amalek, and there is no mitzvah to eradicate them. Okay, so lest there be any doubt, the Palestinians are not Amalek, and there's no mitzvah to eradicate them. Right? Now, power is the contemporary moral challenge of our times, right? I remember one of my professors in Israel, in rabbinical school, he said something, and I'm going to apologize in advance, because it's kind of sexist, all right? But he said, look, a woman who's never been asked on a date has no basis to claim morality because she's a virgin, right? And, you know, for centuries, no one asked us to date, right? We can, and we do this, right? We walk around and we say, you know, the Christians kill people in the name of their religion, and the Muslims kill people in the name of their religion, but we Jews didn't kill people in the name of our religion. True? True. Did we have the ability, the opportunity to kill people in the name of our religion? No. Would we have killed people in the name of our religion if we had the power to do so? Absolutely. Probably, okay? Because that's the nature of human beings, and that's the nature of power, right? So power is the main challenge of our time, right? And so when we look and we say, you know, is Israel doing the right? Now we have to understand what the challenge is, okay? There's no mitzvah to eradicate the Palestinians, but there's also no mitzvah to go like sheep to the slaughter, right? So we have to balance the commandment to be righteous in our use of power and the commandment to stay alive, okay? And it's not easy, okay? And I would say throughout most of its history, Israel, the IDF has done a pretty good job. All right, the last few months, I'm honestly not sure, okay? And to say that you're not sure, you know, and then people on the right, oh, you're a self-hating Jew. I mean, I'm not a self-hating Jew. You see me every night on Zoom, the Israeli flag in the background, all right? You know that I lived in Israel for 4 years. What most of you don't know is I carried a weapon in the defense of the state of Israel, okay? So I'm not a self-hating Jew, right? But there is room to question whether Israel is really doing the best it can to adhere to the morality that it should be. That's all I'm saying. Shabbat Shalom. And we continue with the Kaddish before Musaf, page 155 or 428, and then the Musaf Amidah, I'll say the first